Jesus makes several profound statements about himself, and these declarations are central to understanding his identity and authority and purpose. While critics have often debated what Christians claim about Jesus, it is crucial to focus on what Jesus himself says. His words reveal what he believed about who he was and why he came. Our study that we began last week will explore the statements that Jesus makes in the Gospel of John, specifically in chapters 6 through 15, which are meant to challenge and encourage and enlighten us. By immersing ourselves in Jesus' own words, we gain a better and deeper insight into his mission. Last week, we heard Jesus declare that he was the bread of life, that he alone sustains us and satisfies our needs. This morning, we're going just a couple chapters over from John 6 to John chapter 8, verse 12. In John 8:12, we find Jesus' next great I am statement. When Jesus spoke again to the people, he said, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." Jesus says, "I am the light of the world." The writer of that gospel, John, who is the brother of James, the sons of Zebedee, probably traditionally understood as the youngest of all the disciples. John really likes this light image. He opens his gospel with it. Back in chapter 1, starting in verse 4, it says, "In him," meaning in Jesus, "was life, and that life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has not overcome it." What John does for us is to give us some insight into Jesus' ministry by looking at an incident that occurred during the Feast of Tabernacles in John chapters 7 and 8. The Feast of Tabernacles is one of the great feasts in the Jewish calendar. It commemorated the Israelites' time in the wilderness in tabernacles, or we would call them tents. They followed Moses to the promised land of Canaan, and you will remember that for 40 years, God guided the Israelites from Egypt to the land of Canaan with a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire at night. During the Feast of Tabernacles, every year in the city of Jerusalem, 4 huge 75-foot tall golden lampstands were lit in the temple court of the women, and that is pretty big. Our ceiling in here is just under 15 feet tall, so that would be 5 of these stacked up. Those are pretty tall torches. The priests that lit them had to use ladders to get to the top to light the bowls of oil that were up there. And it is said that everyone in Jerusalem could see the flames of these giant lampstands. And so once these were lit as a part of the festival, men danced with torches, while Levites played instruments like harps and lyres and cymbals and trumpets. There was a celebration that lasted all night long. Hours of light and music and dancing celebrated God's guidance and provision in the wilderness, and it pointed to Israel's hope in the coming light of the world. The Jews had heard and believed for generations many prophecies about the light that the Messiah would bring. Let's look at a few of those. I picked out 4. They all come from the book of Isaiah. In Isaiah chapter 9, verse 2, it says, "The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned." Israel was looking for that prophecy of Isaiah 700 years before the time of Jesus to come true. Then in Isaiah chapter 42, verses 6 and 7. Chapter 42, verses 6 and 7. I know. It's over. And speaking about the chosen servant, you have to have a junior high kid to appreciate that. In speaking of the chosen servant who would come, God says, "I, the Lord, have called you in righteousness. I will take hold of your hand. I will keep you and will make you to be a covenant for the people and a light for the Gentiles, to open the eyes that are blind, to free captives from prison, and to release from the dungeon those who sit in darkness." God sees the darkness that the world is in, and he is sending his servant, the Messiah, to bring them out of that darkness, out into his glorious light. A few chapters later, in Isaiah 49, verse 6, still speaking about the servant, "I will also make you a light for the Gentiles, that my salvation may reach to the ends of the earth." And then the last one's in chapter 60, verse 13. "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. See, darkness covers the earth, and thick darkness is over the peoples, but the Lord rises upon you, and his glory appears over you. Nations will come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your dawn." All of Israel has heard those kind of prophecies for at least 700 years. They have been looking for God to send his light into a dark, chaotic, confusing world where they are at the bottom of the heap, where they are overrun by constant invasion from other people. They're all hoping and dreaming and praying that God would send his Messiah, that he would send his light to defeat the darkness. This Feast of Tabernacles ceremony, lighting these enormous torches, pointed toward the coming presence of God. The pillar of fire meant the presence of God, and the direction of God, and the protection of God. He would provide light in the darkness and a way in the wilderness. So it's in the middle of this setting that we find Jesus in John chapter 7 and chapter 8. In my mind, Jesus is in the temple court, somewhere on the Temple Mount, underneath the glow of these 4 immense torches that are burning, that bright burning light all above him. And Jesus declares in that moment, "I am the light of the world." If you don't understand anything about the Feast of Tabernacles and those giant menorahs, it's still a good story. But when you understand those things that are taking place, this takes on a whole new layer and level of meaning. Jesus stands there beneath the light that is supposed to point back to what God has done for Israel in the past and point ahead to what they believe God will do in the future. And he declares that he is the fulfillment of that ceremony. Of all of Israel's hopes and dreams and prayers for more than 1,000 years since the time of Moses. When Jesus says, "I am the light of the world," the people hear Jesus revealing that he himself was the presence of God. Jesus brought the direction of God. Jesus would provide the protection of God. He would bring God's light to a dark world. Jesus is the one who shows the way through the wilderness. I don't know where all of you live. I can look it up on Realm if I need to. It shows me a map. But from where I am, on this side of the interstate, it is not hard for me, even 4 miles out from here, to look across at the bench and to see a really great big white W on the hill. Can you all see that? How many of you can see that from where you're at home? Some of you. Okay, look to the east. You'll see it. I believe that those torches in the temple at Jerusalem probably make the little white W on the mountain kind of pale in comparison. It is entirely possible. It's recorded that all of Jerusalem was lit by these lights. It is possible that indeed all of Jerusalem could see those 4 giant menorahs burning at the temple from anywhere in the city. Remember, the temple is at the peak of the city of Jerusalem, which is built on a hill. It's surrounded by a valley. So I believe that those big torches would definitely show up. The glow, though, from those torches had limits. Right there in the temple courts, it burned very bright. It's probably hot, too, I would imagine. But Jesus' claim is not that he is the light of the temple, but he is the light of the world, the whole wide world. His light doesn't have limits. Like the recording artist Jelly Roll declared this past week, Jesus is for everybody. Everybody can look to him and see the light that he shines. Jesus was stating that he was the fulfillment of what the torches represented, the very presence of God among the people. Not only this, but his statement provided an immediate consequence of salvation. Just as all the Israelites followed the cloud or the pillar of fire in the wandering in the wilderness, in the Exodus, Jesus is now claiming that if they followed him, they would have salvation. God's guidance, God's presence, God's protection. The great lampstand. All 4 of them would be extinguished at the end of the festival. But the light of Jesus would remain with the people even after his death and departure. It still shines today. Because Jesus was not just the light of the world then. He is the light of the world now. Here's what Jesus does as the light of the world. Jesus, the light of the world, reveals truth. Light exposes what's hidden in darkness. If you've gotten up in the middle of the night to make a trip into the kitchen or into the bathroom, sometimes you trip over stuff, or you step on things and you think, what in the world was that? That wasn't there when I went to sleep. And you can't tell that it's there because you left the lights off. But as soon as you flip the lights on, you realize, oh, it's the Legos. That's what that is. Or, oh, it was all of his Matchbox cars that he left in the middle of the floor. Or, that's the dog's squeaky toy in the middle of the night. Light exposes what is hidden in darkness. It shows the true nature of things. It's only in the light that we truly see reality, whether it's our own reality or the reality of God. Jesus is the ultimate source of divine knowledge, illuminating God's character and his will. He reveals everything that we need to know about God. Again, that goes back to how John introduces his gospel, that he reveals God's glory. Jesus reveals truth. As the light of the world, Jesus also dispels darkness. Jesus' presence and teachings overcome things like like ignorance and sin and spiritual confusion that characterizes the world that we live in. I've used this illustration many times before in the last 30-some years of ministry, but if we go into the deepest, darkest place where are there no windows and there is not a sliver of a crack of a hint of light peeking in from anywhere, whether that room is as big as a closet or that room is as big as the stadium where they'll play the Super Bowl today, one little light in the middle of that darkened space changes the nature of everything. Everybody in that room, in that darkness, can see that light. Darkness never defeats the light, ever. It's never so dark in a place that a light won't shine. Jesus dispels darkness. The world we live in is increasingly gross and nasty and farther away from God's expressed will and his word. But no matter how nasty and gross and chaotic the world grows, it will never defeat the light of Christ. That's what he told Peter back in Matthew chapter 16 after he makes the good confession. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Jesus says the gates of hell, the gates of Hades, the gates of death will never overcome that church, Jesus' church. Jesus is the light of the world, and he reveals truth, and he dispels darkness. He doesn't just drive it away in one place, but he can drive it away in you as well. Jesus also, as the light of the world, provides life. In John's gospel, life and light are always intrinsically linked. There's always one with the other. Jesus gives spiritual life and the light of life. You know people that you've maybe known them their entire lives, and they've been sort of away. But then they meet Jesus, and there is a difference. Everything changes. They are more hopeful, they are more positive, they are more gracious, they are more forgiving. Their whole life is changed because the light of Jesus is now in them. I might go so far as to say if you do know somebody who has not had that kind of an experience after they met Jesus, I don't know if they really met him, because he really does make a change in how we live our lives. And one of the last things that Jesus, as the light of the world, does is that he offers guidance. After he makes this claim, I am the light of the world, Jesus promises, whoever follows me will never walk in darkness. The lighting of those torches during the Feast of Tabernacles remembered that pillar of fire by night that led the Israelites in the wilderness. During the time of Moses, every time that pillar of fire moved, the people picked up and moved. They followed that light. Since Jesus is the light of the world, following him means that we now have God's guidance and direction for our lives. We don't have to walk in the darkness, sort of feeling our way around, trying to stumble in the darkness. But we have that bright light. We can trust that if Jesus is leading us into some place, that's exactly where we need to be. We can trust him and we obey him. And when we do, we have that light of Christ in us. He shows the way to life, and he is the life. Again, John began his gospel by talking about the light of God that is revealed and is shining brilliantly in Jesus back in chapter 1. In Jesus was life, and he was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. And then in verse 9, he says, the true light which gives light to everyone was coming into the world. Jesus was coming. Jesus was being born. Later on in John's Gospel in chapter 3, in a very famous exchange between Jesus and the Pharisee named Nicodemus, Jesus gives this teacher this answer. I bet you've heard it before. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. Whoever believes in him is not condemned, but whoever does not believe stands condemned already, because they have not believed the name of God's one and only Son. This is the verdict. Light has come into the world. But people love darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil. Everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. But whoever lives by the truth comes into the light, so that it may be seen plainly that what they have done has been done in the sight of God. Jesus says, light has come into the world. If we love him, if we love that light, we won't have anything to do with those dark deeds, with those things that take place in the shadows. We run out of that darkness into his light, absorbing it and reflecting it to those around us. When we become followers of Jesus, we also become lights. Now, it's not because there is light in us. That sounds kind of new agey and weird to me. We don't have any light in our own selves to shine. Years ago, one of our former youth ministers taught one Sunday morning that we needed to be just like the moon. I can't remember if it was Sean or Daniel. Guys, if you're watching, you'll have to let me know. But the whole point of his message was this very idea. The sun shines on its own. It produces light and energy on its own. The moon is a really big rock in space. It only reflects the light that the sun gives off. So instead of trying to be the sun, Jesus' people need to be like the moon, reflecting his bright, brilliant, shining white light all the time. If you're a believer in Jesus, you have said, I want to live in his light. I want his guidance and his protection and his provision. I want his presence in my life. But it is also now your responsibility, and I would also say your joy, to reflect all of those same things to the people who are around you. How can you have a real influence on the people in your life who don't yet know Christ? By living in his light, allowing all the things that Jesus is to be visible in you. Your grace, your mercy, your joy, your forgiveness. All of those incredible attributes of Jesus, those are the things that when we reflect them to others, they say, I don't know what it is about you, but you're not right. You're not like everybody else. You're different. How is it that you're not so angry at what she just said or what he just did? Well, because I have Jesus, and I don't have to live that way anymore. For those of us who are following Jesus, let me urge you to do what you can Shine up that exterior so you can better reflect his light to the world around you. But to follow the light of God in Christ Jesus is to receive it, to take it inside, to allow it into all the deep, dark corners of your soul. If you're struggling because you're stuck in the shadows, in the dark, you don't know where you're going, you do know where you've been, and you don't want to go back there, you need to find the light of Jesus in your very own life. You need to hitch your wagon close to him and stay in that well-lit path. In just a minute, we're going to sing an invitation song. And if you're ready to make a decision to follow Jesus wherever he leads, to stay in the light and out of the darkness, I hope you'll come during that invitation song.